Hello, friends. Welcome to Multiverse with Chandrakant. And as you know, that we are exploring the star systems which are close by to Sun, and we have found many red dwarf. So the candidate that we are going to explore today is no different. It's like a typical red dwarf. And let's find out what is the name of this particular star system. And this is called Ross 154. It's close by and it is a red dwarf. So, to explore further, let's hop into our imaginary spaceship. Let's get into orbit of Ross 154 to examine it up close. Let's go. So as you can see, this is a live feed. It is rotating nicely. This is how the Ross 154 looks like. So what is so special in this star? What are the key characteristics that we must know? And that is, it is a very dim star. Even though it is close by, but it is very hard to look at. It is red in color, and at the same time is quite dim in intensity, and it's slightly far off also, so you just cannot examine this without a telescope. You need a good telescope to examine Ross 154. And also, did you know that the distance of Ross 154 is about 9.69 light years? So when we say that it is 9.69 light years, it's slightly away. It is not so close by. It's about 10 light years. So if you want to examine the Ross 154, you will have to take a flight which can travel at much faster speed, at least a fraction of light speed, and then it will take couple of years for you to reach. Even light takes about 10 years to reach Ross 154. So that is why it's in the neighborhood, but it is not so close. Well, in terms of the mass of this star, it's about only 15% of the mass of the sun. So it is relatively very small. And since this is a red dwarf, and red dwarf, do not function like a typical star like sun, because sun has a very, very strong thermonuclear reaction going on in its core. But here, in a red dwarf, the thermonuclear reaction is happening in the core, but most of the heat is transferred through the helium which is produced in the core by way of convection. And because of that, the entire star is made of helium, and the core has uh, the hydrogen in it. So hydrogen combines, form helium. And in our sun, because it's a much larger star, the helium is also combined to produce uh, much larger element. But here, in case of red dwarf, since helium is rotating around the entire star and taking away the heat from the core, uh, the reaction for the next generation of elements to produce is very, very slow, because the helium is mostly spread across the star. And very little amount of helium is available. So once the hydrogen gets consumed, the helium based thermonuclear reaction gets very slow, and as a result, the red dwarf stars have a very, very long life, because they burn very slowly. And by the way, friends, I hope you know that almost 80% of the star that we have in our galaxy and across multiple galaxies in the universe are the red dwarf. And that is why in the vicinity we have been exploring, and most of them are red dwarf, with the exception of Sirius and Alpha Centauri A. Well, Rouse 154 is about, it's kind of cool. It's about 30% cooler than our sun, and it emits light in the red spectrum, so it is cool actually. And the temperature is about 3000 Kelvin on the surface of Ross 154, and 30% cooler. So it is not very hot star, and since it's small also, the extent of its gravitational pull will also be small. So I think this is why uh, it's very difficult for us to see the star up close with our naked eyes. We need a special telescope to look at Ross 154, and it's quite far off also. It's like 10 light years away, so it is quite tough, it is quite dim. That is why I said it's a dim red dwarf star. And since it's very difficult to look at the star system, however, we have used some special techniques to find out that there could be planets around this star. We know very little about these planets, but I think they could be a rocky planet, pretty much like Earth. And I think one of the planet is three times the size of Earth. And there are three planets, and they are rotating around this particular star. And as you know that life may be very tough around red dwarf, because even though they emit less light and the planets are much closer compared to what we see in our solar system, because our star is larger. But in case of a red dwarf, the gravitational pull is not as strong as sun, and because of that the planets are close by in the orbit. So and the red dwarf emit very little light, so the chance of any life coming up on a red dwarf uh, is very very remote. I mean, so far we have not examined, but who knows, when James Webb start to explore the cosmos, we may be revealed by some surprise with related to red dwarfs. Especially red dwarf stars are so many spread across the galaxy. And like any other red dwarf, Ross 154 is also designated as a flare star. And when we talk about flare, it's basically for no reason, for all of a sudden, a red dwarf burst into a huge flare. Like for example, in our sun, the flare is like a small, tiny little item, and we can predict it when it is going to flare based on the magnetic activity. But in case of the flare star, which is mostly red dwarfs, when the flare happens, it happens many many times stronger than its visible light, and it lasts for a few minutes. Say for example, for 10 minutes, star would immediately become so bright, at least 20 to 30 times brighter than it originally is. So that is why uh, any life which is living in that solar system where there is a red dwarf in the middle, the chances are these flares will fry off everything. So that is why so far we have not found any evidence of life around any red dwarf that we've examined, and Ross 154 is no different. It is a flare star. It emits flare once in a while, and these are very very energetic. So friends, this is something which is close by, hardly at 10 light years away. So if we are able to generate a new technology based engine, or create the new travel strategies, we may be able to explore Ross 154 in future up close. Maybe send some probes, robotic probes, to examine that system. Nevertheless, it is very dim. It is in the neighborhood, and I thought I'll bring this star as an important aspect, and understanding the neighborhood that sun is in. So friends, let me know what you feel. Share your comments. If you have any more knowledge about Ross 154, I would be eager to hear from you. And as always, thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.